Dennis is an old hand at Praxis. I think he's been here.
Nearly as long as you.
The Gold Coast one, the first Gold Coast one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's always good to have you back, Dennis.
Thank you.
So Dennis's presentation is about the meaning and value of vitalism in chiropractic, my results and how to fix them. Take it away, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Craig. My presentation is by video today, so we will go straight there.
Hi, I'm Dennis Richards. Welcome to my presentation. The title of my presentation is The Meaning and Value of Vitalism in Chiropractic. Specifically, I'm going to quickly review my findings and then how to solve my findings. By that, I mean that we had some controversy and differences of opinion amongst the participants in my survey. And I want to propose a way that that division might be solved if those people wanted to do that. So as we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the university. I'd like to thank my supervisors, Dr. Elizabeth Emanuel and Professor Sandra Grace, for their ongoing wonderful, wonderful support and assistance. I'd like also to acknowledge the Postgraduate Association and particularly Katie for putting on this wonderful event under these particular conditions. So let's go to our first slide. The background of my research had to do with the current global pandemics of non-communicable lifestyle-related conditions. These are not communicable conditions such as COVID. These are conditions that you give to yourself. You don't get them from someone else. You give them to yourself by living an unhealthy lifestyle. And they include conditions such as many cancers, obesity, heart problems, diabetes, and so on. Because our system has such difficulty dealing with these particular problems efficiently and effectively and cost effectively, new approaches have been called for. Some chiropractors have suggested that a vitalistic chiropractic model might be one such new approach that could help in dealing with these problems. However, there's very little information known about what chiropractors mean when they speak about vitalism and what value this type of chiropractic might have. So my research questions ask this. First research question, what do chiropractors actually mean when they speak about vitalism? The second question is, what value do chiropractors believe that thinking and practices based on vitalism might offer in addressing these current global prevalences of non-communicable lifestyle-related conditions? My research design and methods was briefly as follows. We used an exploratory, sequential, mixed methods design of 3 phases. Phase 1 involved qualitative, semi-structured interviews of 18 key informants in 8 countries around the world. Phase 2 involved quantitative, online survey of closed-ended questions of members of the Chiropractors Association of Australia and members of the New Zealand Chiropractors Association. Phase 3 was involved in the same survey, but it was a qualitative part of open-ended questions so that survey respondents could give more detail as to their thoughts. Our results were as followed. To our first research question to do with meaning, our participants gave us several meanings. The first meaning was innate intelligence. This means an inborn intelligence in living things, including the human being. When we speak of intelligence here, we don't mean the ability to consciously do mathematics. What we mean here is your ability to run your liver and your kidney and your heart without you even thinking about it. So it's an inborn, deeper intelligence. In this form, it's what would be called a traditional form of vitalism. A traditional form of vitalism would argue that there is a difference between living and non-living things. And secondly, that this difference takes the form of an intelligence or an energy or a force that living organisms have that non-living things do not possess. A majority of my participants saw vitalism as a guide to a good life. It was not only a guide as to how to conduct their practices, but how to conduct their whole lives also. In fact, they believe that vitalism, this belief in this innate intelligence in the body, was an essence of the identity of chiropractic. Without this, chiropractic would not be chiropractic. In these particular points, I've been speaking about a majority of participants. A minority of participants, quite a small group, around 20%, saw vitalism as an outdated, unscientific, and unacceptable belief system. This group, their viewpoints could be described as materialist. That is, they believe that the universe and human beings are composed of material, that is matter only, and they saw the universe as a giant machine and human beings as small machines. So we would call that a mechanistic worldview. Very, very different from the vitalistic worldview that involves this universal force or universal intelligence. Research question 2, what value did this offer? First of all, a majority of participants believe that a two-part chiropractic vitalistic practice model composed of, first of all, chiropractic care as necessary, and secondly, as healthy lifestyle advice, could offer great value in addressing these pandemics of these lifestyle-related conditions. No surprise, a minority saw no value at all in such a vitalistic practice model. However, they did propose another model, which was a one-part practice model of simply chiropractic care for people who are in pain of musculoskeletal origin. And so we can see these two groups here. On the left, you see the minority, which was anything on most questions between 15 and 25% that were not supportive of vitalism. On the right side, you can see anywhere between 55 and 75% of respondents on different questions were supportive of vitalism. So we had differences of opinion between different groups. First of all, differences of opinion over vitalism between a majority of study participants who supported vitalism and a minority of study participants who did not support vitalism. We found that a majority of participants who were practitioners, obviously, supported vitalism, and the educators and researchers who responded, by and large, did not support vitalism. Another difference of opinion I found particularly interesting was a difference of opinion between the image, the advocacy that the professional association, the Chiropractors Association of Australia, not in New Zealand, only in Australia, the image that the association presents concerning chiropractic is with the majority of members. It's not supportive of vitalism, whereas a majority of members of the association were strongly supportive of vitalism. So what we have here, the literature tells us that the divisions, such as this one that we found, is quite normal in professions. Such divisions are not based, generally speaking, on reason, although people argue or try to argue this from a base of reason. These differences stem from fundamentally different ontological worldviews. And so we had two groups. Our majority were able to understand their lives and the universe as including both a metaphysical life force of vitalism and also a mechanistic understanding of the universe. They certainly acknowledge that the universe is composed of material, of matter, but they saw very, very much more to it than that. and they saw they could understand certain things. For example, when they studied anatomy, they understood the hip joint as a ball and socket joint, which is a mechanical concept, but they were able to juggle and able to involve in their thinking two different worldviews, and were able to switch from one to the other as necessary, or indeed they were able to hold both in their thinking. On the other hand, the majority group of respondents were only able to only accepted one worldview, and that worldview was that of mechanism. And they were very, very strong that that should be the only worldview involved. So if we wanted to solve this difference between them, how might we be able to do this? I think we can do this using some fundamental concepts of quantum physics. These two people here are two of the very famous original quantum physicists, and I've included these pictures of them when they were quite young. In the 1920s, the top one is Werner Heisenberg, and the bottom one is Niels Bohr. Perhaps you've heard of them. Heisenberg was famous for, amongst other things, with his development of what was called the indeterminacy principle. Heisenberg posed that if you are studying subatomic particles, such as electrons, you were able to determine either the position of the electron, or you could determine the momentum of the electron, but you could not determine both at the same time. And of course, this did not fit with classical physics, because in classical physics, with any body, you should be able to determine its position and momentum both at the same time. With subatomic particles, according to Heisenberg, that is not possible. You cannot determine them both at the same time. You can look at one or the other, and the more closely you look at one, the more fuzzy the other one gets. 1 year later, Bohr proposed the complementarity principle. Bohr noted that light could be understood as either particles, that is photons of light, that is quanta of light, or it could be understood as wave. However, the concept of light as a particle and light as a wave are mutually exclusive. We have this situation again where we have two mutually exclusive worldviews. And what Bohr proposed is that we should accept both of these so we know better, and that we should use either or in context. If a particular context that made more sense to understand light as particles, do so. If in another context it was more useful to understand light as waves, do so. And he expanded this argument to beyond physics, and he argued that this could be a way of understanding much more than just subatomic particles, but a way of approaching many, many problems in the universe in general. And so I believe that the majority of our respondents in my research are using these two principles, perhaps without knowing it. And they're using the two principles to look at human beings and their work as both metaphysical, as both involving metaphysical life force, and in other ways, they're looking at them as a machine to understand how their bodies work. And they have no problem switching between or using both of these viewpoints at the same time. The smaller group will only use one viewpoint. And I think if we want to have some bridging over this divide between the two groups, we have to follow these concepts of these two quantum physicists, where we accept that we have two different worldviews, two different viewpoints, and we use both of them as is most useful at any particular time. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'm ready now, as you are, to, if you have any questions, any comments you'd like to make, I'd welcome them. Thank you.
Oh, well, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dennis. And always interesting, your work. I love controversy.
So do I. it's on the cutting edge.
How's the politics of the professional association travelling these days?
In the wrong direction. Our association is being run by a group of mechanists at the moment. Right. And the mechanists are the majority in the association. It's coming from the administration of our association, I think. So there will be tears sooner or later. It's a cycle we go through.
Okay, so I'd like to invite questions from the floor, if that's okay. Does anyone here in the audience have any questions for Dennis? Well, I might kick off then, Dennis. So I suppose, what are the implications of this project, and how do you envisage carrying this forward once completed?
I've retired from practice and I don't want to go back into practice. My supervisors have suggested that I apply for adjunct status at the university and simply continue writing up and publishing data and information from my data collection and from my thesis, because there's a lot I couldn't put in the thesis. I have a lot of other information to present, first of all. Secondly, you're probably aware, as you're doing I think Sophia mentioned, as you're doing a PhD project, you have to focus on your research questions and getting answers. But as you go along, you think, oh, wow, that's an interesting subject. I'd like to have a look at that thing over there sometime. And my supervisors had to be very strict with me on that and bring me back. There are a lot of other topics that I'd like to look at in terms of thinking. And so basically, my plan is to continue writing, really, and produce information, present information from my data collection, and then expand on that. I think that, yeah, we won't go too much into quantum physics, but there's a lot, and, you know, a lot of those quantum physicists in the 1920s called the Copenhagen group, they were Danes and Germans mainly, and they were all very highly educated, as you'd imagine. They completely baffled Einstein. He even to the day he died, he didn't accept their proposals. He just thought they were too weird. But what they did was, in working this out, they went back to ancient Greek philosophy, which Europeans, they're taught philosophy in high school, and they were able to nut out the indeterminacy principle and the complementarity principle. They're from ancient Greek philosophy. They're also from Eastern philosophy, the Tao, T-A-O, it's exactly the same thing. And so I was going to put one of those symbols in here somewhere. And so I think I'll also go back to, I'm very interested in philosophy in general. I'll go back and see if I can match my data to those Greek ways of thinking that underlie our thinking.
So yes, look, I think you've been well advised by your supervisor in the sense of keeping the focus of the PhD project. I remember when Peter Baverstock was the Dean of Research at this university some time ago, going along to postgrad orientation sessions and stuff like that. And he would always say, look, you know, the idea is to keep it achievable. You want one solid brick of gold rather than a wall made out of mud brick. You know, one gold brick of knowledge is what's really important. And he always sort of advised too that most people won't actually read the thesis. The thesis is just the test, the exam of your worthiness of translation to Dr. whoever. And it's that point that your publication life really begins. So you can find a lot of work, hopefully from your thesis, you'll find a lot of avenues to pursue for later publication. And it's at that point you think about your magnum opus and all the different little angles of it rather than the thesis itself. So how prolific are you looking forward to becoming in the research literature?
Well, do you want an idealistic answer or a serious one?
Well, tell me more about the politics of publication in your area then.
I had over 20 publications before I went into my PhD work, and they were all in chiropractic. But there are about 106,000 chiropractors in the whole world, and hardly any of them obviously are into research and publication. And so that is mainly controlled by a small group. And I don't want to publish in the profession because it's too incestuous. Don't tell them I said that. But I want to publish outside of the profession, and I've got the journals lined up. There are plenty of journals, and the university wants us to publish in the high-ranking journals. So I'll be trying for that. I'll just say two more things. It's so much easier to write a 3,000 to 5,000 word paper on a particular chunk of or area of your interest than write a $90,000 thesis, 90,000 word thesis. Yeah. And the other thing
well, the uni gets about $90,000 at the end of it, so that's
yes, I know. I think my supervisors have asked me to stay around because another 6 chiropractors have followed me into Southern Cross doing PhDs. So I think they see me as a profit center, maybe. And, but, you know, I think this is really good for the profession. And so I'll keep doing that. But I think my title will be adjunct tea lady because I'll be just getting the coffee. I'd also like to say one of the professors at, to do with naturopathy in the old days at Southern Cross has asked me to co-edit a book on vitalism with him.
All right.
Vitalism, a critical reappraisal, because it's a very controversial subject. Yeah. And so that'll be, we're hoping that'll be a multidisciplinary chapters written by different people from different countries in different professions. So I think that's going to take a long time, be a lot of hard work, but be something really, really interesting, at least for me. I don't know if anyone will read it, but it'll be fun, I think.
So you're looking forward to life after PhD?
You know, one of my supervisors said, don't stop, keep writing, keep writing. And I was exhausted. Keep writing, you'll forget it all. The other one said, take 1 to 2 months off. And so, you know, let's be serious. So I've slowed down, but I've gone into Praxis because I thought, into this conference, I thought this is a great opportunity to learn to present online. That's the future. And I've signed up for the HDR symposium to present online too. So right. In a couple of weeks. So
is that the School of Health and Human Sciences symposium?
Yeah. No, sorry.
Is that the school?
Yes. And so, you know, I'm trying to stop myself, but I haven't managed to stop so far.
All right. Okay. Well, look, we might have time for one more quick question if we have any from the floor.
I got one, if we've got time.
Oh, thanks, Sophia. Yes, I was hoping you'd chime in.
I just was, for those of us who are a little bit ignorant to the politics within the chiropractic profession, can you just give a little bit more context around what the significance of the problem that you're addressing?
Yes.
Yeah.
The situation is this. We live, you don't because you're a naturopath, we live in a physical world. Science these days studies the physical world, and philosophy and religion to a large extent have been pushed to the side. Okay, everyone wants to be a scientist these days. If you read the paper about climate change or the COVID pandemic, they say, well, this is the science. And so science has almost become the new religion, believe in this. And so most of the science is the way of thinking underlying science is done in the world today is a philosophical school of thought known as positivism. Are you familiar with that? And so in positivism, just, I know Craig is, but just in case there is anyone listening who isn't, positivism is a way of thinking in that the only things that are legitimate and worthy of consideration are things we can positively identify by our five senses or by instruments that extends our senses, such as a microscope. Okay, so vitalism isn't something you can see in a microscope. You can't, it's a concept. And so in terms of positive science, vitalism is not a legitimate topic. And so in our profession, we have the science group and the majority group in controversy over this, and we've been that way for 125 years.
All right, well, look, thanks very much, Dennis. Now, I'm sure that if anyone else wants to discuss this at greater length with you, I'd just like to remind everyone that you can continue to contact the speakers through the Hoover app and ask questions. And of course, that's a good opportunity to perhaps swap email addresses and phone numbers and stuff like that. We're just run out of time for this particular presentation. I'm sure you can find ways to carry it on. But anyway, look, thanks, Dennis. And we hope you get across the line soon.
Thank you. I'm done. I've submitted.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations from everyone. Yeah, that's always a good achievement.
Thank you.